Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Mastering Your Fertility TV. This week, we are sharing with you episode 38 of our podcast, where we interview a Canadian life coach, Spenser Brassard. She is a fertility coach, and she works on the mind-body connection and how that impacts fertility and how women can start respecting that and addressing that in their fertility journey, and how it can actually be a game changer for a lot of women and actually help you get pregnant. So we're really excited to share this interview with you. I personally had a lot of fun in this interview with Spenser because most of the things that she's talking about that are kind of limiting beliefs are things that I've struggled with on my personal journey. You know, we're talking about things like perfectionism and having issues with like self-worth and being really critical of ourselves and denying negative emotions or feeling guilty when you have negative emotions, not allowing yourself to feel your feelings. And I think this is really common in this journey. It's just, it's hard when you can't get pregnant when you want to. And a lot of things come up, and a lot of maybe unhealthy emotional thought patterns that we've had for our whole lives kind of rear their ugly heads, and they really start to kind of rule this journey for us. So this interview with Spenser is really a great first step to getting some of us out of some of those thought patterns and negative emotions and perfectionism and like super type A-ness that makes this journey harder than it needs to be. And I think her main message is that pain is not the same thing as suffering, and that we don't have to suffer on this journey. Suffering is what we create with our thoughts about our own pain.
Yeah, our perspective of the experience that we're experiencing in life, whatever type of challenge that is, whether it's your fertility journey or anything else that life is going to bring your way. So I love how Spenser talks about the mind-body connection as not only being a tool to get through the fertility journey, but also as a tool for parenting and for just everything in life. It's just really helps you develop this emotional intelligence, this idea of self-care or self-compassion. And it's so needed, especially in the world that we live in today, where, you know, we have so much social media and comparison going on, and it's getting harder to live, and we have to work faster, harder, stronger. And we kind of forget all about our mind-body connection and how important it really is to living a happy and joyous life. So I'm going to properly introduce Spenser, and we'll get right into the interview. So Spenser Brassard is a Canadian-born and raised certified life coach and host of the Fertile Ground podcast. She turned her fertility journey into the best thing that's ever happened to her, using the tools and techniques that she now gets to share with women all around the world. And spoiler alert, you don't have to get it perfect. You just have to get started. So today she teaches big-hearted women like you how to do the same. Hi, Spenser. Welcome. Thank you so much for being on the Mastering Your Fertility podcast today. We're so happy to have you.
I'm so happy to be here with you, ladies, and all these amazing listeners.
Thank you. All right. So can you tell us about your personal journey towards mind-body medicine and how you became a life coach to help others?
Yeah. It was my own fertility journey that really set me on the path of discovering other modalities besides just the physical aspect to fertility. There was just something inside me that said, there's more to it than the physical body. And so I discovered my own life coach, and it was like light bulbs. And like, it was just the best discovery ever, because I realized that it wasn't ever the circumstance that creates our suffering, that it is our thoughts about the circumstance that makes us suffer. So to know that was the most empowering experience probably of my life, and still has been. To not need that outside validation, to not need something outside of me to feel like I'm enough, was incredibly empowering. So I was like, I need to be one of those.
Wow.
So that's why I did it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really powerful. Like the idea, well, and really the truth that the thoughts are what cause the suffering. Because, you know, you see lots of different people in different life circumstances, and you could see two people in exactly the same circumstance and have just completely different mindsets about it, and just, you know, completely different experiences for how that affects them. So yeah, that's really powerful.
Yep.
Yeah, I always said that like circumstances don't come with automatic feelings. Like we think pregnancy will make us feel enough. Pregnancy will make us feel worthy. Pregnancy will make us feel, joy. And it might be what lights you up totally. But the good news is you can have that now. You don't have to wait. And then the irony is that that's what attracts the experience to you because you're happy. You're like, I am enough. And this baby doesn't have to come to make me feel like I am enough, to make me feel like I'm worthy. I'm worthy now. And you get to decide that. So yeah, it is. It's totally powerful.
Oh, I love that. I love within the first 2 minutes. It's so juicy already. You're so speaking of, so what inspired you to work with mamas to be? I know you call them mama bears, which is adorable. Also starting your podcast, The Fertile Ground.
Yeah. I think that women on the journey are suffering and they don't need to. And I think, one of the things that people say after working with me is, okay, yeah, like this was good for my fertility and like I got pregnant, but like I now have the tools to deal with every other area of my life. I know how to be at work. I know how to be in my relationships. So I guess life coaching is extremely empowering in the sense of, and why I decided to be a life coach in the fertility industry is, of course that they're suffering and they don't need to be. And you might be too, if you're watching this or you're listening to this, but also I think it's like a pre-parenting. I think it's a parenting course. Like I think it can be this conception period and not everyone is gifted that time. Not everyone is gifted to know how to, change your thoughts and realize that you don't have all the control and to be okay with that, to have a healthy sense of control on the journey by, learning how to change your thoughts about the circumstance is actually you do feel like you have control in that shift. So yeah, I think that they suffer and they don't need to. And I think that also it's incredible for the next generation that's about to come through. I think it's like the most divine plan in the world. So that's why I'm doing it.
That's so cool. Yeah. We're firm believers that everything that we talk about, obviously the vast majority of it is very medicine focused, right? Functional medicine. Physical. Yeah. Right. But the mind body piece has to be there too. And we've been trained in that. Unfortunately, there's just so much that goes into fertility. We haven't been able to do a lot of focus on that. So I'm really excited about this episode coming out to just really help our listeners understand that, it's you could do it all. But if you don't have that mind body piece there, you'll continue to suffer or just not feel right there.
Yeah. And I think too, like what I want to say to the people who are listening to this is I don't want the ego to come back in the back door and be like, oh my God, why haven't I been doing that? Or, oh, there's something wrong with me if I'm suffering. Like absolutely not. Like we have been conditioned in our culture to, reach for something outside of ourselves in order to be fulfilled. So that's not at all what I'm wanting to do and wanting to, I want people to realize that this is how we've been conditioned. This is what like advertisements everywhere tell us. So I think it's amazing that you guys are bringing awareness to the research and, because there has been a ton of research behind mind body medicine, but, bringing awareness I think is really, really important. So I think it's amazing that you guys are doing that.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think it's important to highlight what you said about our culture really creating this situation for most of us, because you're right. I mean, that's what we're taught to do. I mean, we're obviously here in the States, so it's like the idea of the American dream. It's everything that you reach for and you strive for. And, we value motivation kind of above everything else. And our goals in life are to achieve things and acquire things.
Exactly.
And we don't really, most of us don't really know how to be happy and to be comfortable with ourselves and just kind of be who we are and have that be enough. So I think when a fertility situation comes up, it just really highlights that, and it kind of reinforces those feelings of like shame and not being enough and guilt and all of that. So
it can be an incredible catalyst.
Definitely.
I think with women, especially, the media, ever since we've been just little girls, has pointed out that we're not good enough. You need this makeup and you need to have this waistline and you need to have this many or this big of breasts and and we're just not good enough. And so throw inability to get pregnant in the mix and wow, that's tough. So
absolutely. Yeah, no, I hear you. And I think it also plays into the, and I know people talk about this a lot in the fertility industry, but perfectionism, right? Needing everything to look and be a certain way in order to feel good about yourself. And I think it's a really amazing catalyst to let that go, to realize that the only one, like I've been talking about perfectionist a lot lately because it's just kind of really rang true for me and really inspired me lately. But the only one placing those conditions on yourself is you. And, the working out, the eating perfect, and how hard we are on ourselves if we steer off the perfect line, right? If we go to a friend's birthday party and there's cake and we have a bite, right? So of gluten, oh my God, how dare we have a bite of gluten, right? And, I think when we eat well, it is very empowering, and it can be, and I do really believe in the power of eating well and taking care of our bodies. But I think when we let go of the idea of perfectionism, realize you're the only one placing it on yourself, the good news is that you're the one that can also release it. So it's very, very liberating experience to gift yourself the idea that perfection is impossible, to be on the journey and to do everything perfectly is impossible. And doing, really what's right for you and what feels good to you. So, yeah.
I think with everything that we are trying to teach our listeners on the podcast, one thing that we try to emphasize and hopefully comes across is progress, not perfection.
Yeah.
And, doing things in moderation. We just had an episode come out, episode 37, when we're talking about toxins, which can be super overwhelming to people and just feel like they don't have any control because toxins are all around them and there's really no way to avoid them. But I love the way that Laura Adler on that particular interview talks about the moderation and just, getting started. And it could take a year, it could take 5 years, it could take 10 years, of just making progress. So a lot of that has to do with mindset too.
It does. Absolutely. And that's the thing is if you believe you need to do everything perfectly, which has been conditioned in women for a long time, like you said, if you steer off that path, you're full of guilt. And perfection is not possible. So then you're just filled with guilt all the time. And you have to understand that you really have to wrap your head around the mindset that if you believe you have to do everything perfectly based on all of the information that you get hit with, then what happens is then if you steer off that path, which everyone does because perfection is unattainable, you're riddled with guilt. And it really is, it's kind of like this aha moment of, holy shit, this is something that I'm doing to myself, but also what I can let go of as well.
Right. And that's just the power piece, that's very empowering. And this is a hard journey for so many reasons. We don't need to make it harder on ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I hear you for sure.
So you learned to be a life coach and you're enjoying it. And so during that time, or working with your clients, I guess, what are some of the top mindset tools that you find yourself using most often with your clients?
At first, definitely what we need to do and what I teach women how to do is to feel their feelings. I think that when we are on the journey, we have a bad thought and we go, no, this is not good. This is I don't want to feel this. This is going to be bad for me, right? So labeling your emotions and your feelings as bad. And the truth is that there's no such thing as a good or bad emotion. The only thing that isn't good for your body is a stuck emotion. So if you're oh no, I can't feel that feeling because the law of attraction is going to, manifest. No, not at all. We need to feel our feelings. There's a process in which I take them through it, but essentially what it is it's breathing, breathing through the emotion. Not getting too caught up in the story of it, right? Say you get some blood work back and you're not too sure what to think about it. We want to root ourselves. And that's what the mind-body connection is it's instead of living from the neck up in, research analytics, masculine aspects of our brain, we need to begin to shift a little bit more to the feminine side of the brain, which is feeling, which is intuition, which is creativity. And that is definitely how we root ourselves in our body. So feeling our feelings. If you have a thought and it doesn't feel good, at worst what it is, it's uncomfortable. That's at worst what a feeling is it's uncomfortable. And allowing your body to root you and support you in feeling your feelings, which is essentially just breathing in the emotion, no longer resisting it. I always say it's never the circumstance or the thoughts that's creating a lot of the suffering. What it is it's like the resistance to it. It's saying, I shouldn't have this thought. I shouldn't be feeling this way. I shouldn't be sad. I shouldn't be angry. You are. Why would you fight it? That's insane to fight how you feel. So it's this beautiful self-love, compassion piece that you can enter into your life in all areas of your life. So that's definitely like one of the main tools. I believe that pain is not a bad thing. Suffering is, and suffering is a story we create about our pain, right? So we need to either grieve or disbelieve our thoughts. So in my, private coaching sessions and in my group coaching that I have, what I do is either you grieve it by feeling your feelings, right? If you've had a loss or you're dealing with some kind of a loss. So you grieve it, you feel your feelings, you give yourself time. And disbelieving is kind of the thought work that I do. So disbelieving the thoughts that aren't really true. So one of the simple questions I ask is that really true, right? I shouldn't be feeling this way. Is that really true? Well, I don't know exactly. So what we're doing is we're detaching the hold that this thought has on you. And you're realizing that this thought really does create a negative pattern in your life. And so I'll ask questions like, when you believe this thought, how does it make you feel? How do you react? And you realize that it's just this one thought of say, for example, we keep with, I shouldn't be feeling this way. It makes me resist my thoughts. It keeps me in distraction mode. So I'm always busy. I never have time to relax and sit and breathe and meditate. I shouldn't be feeling this way. I talk really, really shitty to myself. I shouldn't be feeling this way. It kind of builds this resistance and I'm not nice to the people around me. So you're like, oh my God, all from this one thought. And who would I be without it? And it's just that's when the mind-body connection opens up. That's when your body feels light. And I really, really want to encourage you to listen to your body. If your body feels tight, it's your body's way of saying, nah, this thought's not true. If it feels open and light, it's your body's way of saying, yes, this way, come this way. So that's kind of an example of taking thought. So what I've been trained to do is to kind of get to know what is that limiting thought that's standing in your way. What is the thought that's creating the most resistance in your fertility journey right now? And then we basically create new neural pathways to support a thought that is much more supportive of your fertility, but also just your life and your happiness, right? Because that's what this is about. My thing is, I want you to be happy now. I don't want you to have to wait for that positive pregnancy test to tell you that you can be happy. So
yeah, that's really powerful. I think I sort of think of the thoughts as like a tape on replay, and we start forming what that tape is going to say to us really young. It's kind of surprising how much even our early experiences and how we're raised and what our ideas are about perfection and motivation and what we should be doing with our lives really forms super early on in our lives. And most of us have been living with kind of this really critical negative tape on replay in our minds forever.
Yeah. Exactly. And we don't know, unless we have a third party, often it's really hard to distinguish what are those thoughts because they're so subconscious, right? So yeah, I totally agree. Based on how we were raised, right? Based on what we heard from the media, based on from what we were taught in school. So that's where the compassion piece comes out, not, oh my God, I can't believe I haven't been, thinking positive thoughts. It's more like, I wasn't taught this. We weren't taught this shit in schools. And now we can begin to, this fertility journey has been my opportunity to shine the light on some thoughts and that have been really standing in my way. So totally.
Curious about so you said that one thought that comes up a lot is I shouldn't be feeling this way. Totally agree with that. I can see how that's pretty common. Are there any other common thoughts among like women's fertility journeys that comes up that you're noticing?
For sure. I have to do everything perfectly. Like I have to force it. If I want to get pregnant, I need to force it. Like I need to do all the things. That's one. And then one was like a big aha for me was getting pregnant is hard. That is a limiting belief. 100%. Because when we believe that thought, what does it create? More of the same thing. This is going to be hard. This is not easy. This is difficult. So we have to be able to, like, that's the thing, is these thoughts are sneaky. You could say, based on my past, getting pregnant has been hard, but is that thought supporting your journey? Right? And when we believe the thought that getting pregnant is hard, how do you react? What happens in your body? You get pissed off. You get angry. Your body goes, ugh, right? Like, I don't know. Like, that's the thing, is you get really, really good at communicating with your body, and your body goes, ugh, I don't want to, like it kind of closes up, right? So you don't have to immediately change the thought to getting pregnant is easy, because that's not really believable, right? But life can be easy. Let's look for examples in your life where things have been easy. Maybe finding your spouse was like super easy. So things can be easy. Things don't always have to be so hard. And I think that thought that getting pregnant is hard, I think we then subconsciously make the journey more difficult and complicated than it needs to be in order to feel worthy of a baby. So
that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the aspect of saying, okay, so what? You mean I can introduce simplicity? You mean I don't have to do 14 different workouts? You mean I can just stick to one and do it 3 times a week and it's not that big of a deal? So, and the thing is that's why this life coaching is so incredible, is because getting pregnant is hard. You would just say, okay, that's true. But the truth of the matter is that if a thought is not supporting you, then you can change it. That is the bottom line, because thoughts are all relative. So it's this incredible, empowering experience of saying, okay, this thought is not supporting me. It's not supporting my fertility. It's not supporting my mind-body connection. I can change it to something that supports me more. So yeah, that's another one.
Yeah, I feel like this is kind of a place where social media can be such a killer. You know, what we're talking about with like the whole getting pregnant can be easy. And it's like the comparison trap, right? Like where we start to get into this thought like, well, it's easy for somebody else. And if it didn't happen that way for me, that means that it's hard for me and there's something wrong with me. And
Right.
I mean, like I love social media for a lot of different reasons. And, particularly on Instagram, there's these amazing pods of women that are kind of supporting one another through this entire journey. But it's really difficult when one of those women get pregnant and, somebody else is still struggling on their journey. And it really reinforces some of those difficult negative thoughts that kind of like, tighten us up and just make us feel unworthy. And like this whole journey just has to be that hard for some of us.
For sure. I think comparison is a whole other life coaching category because you're making the assumption that they're happy and you're not.
Right.
You have no idea how they feel, because pregnancy doesn't come with automatic, feelings, right? Circumstances don't come with that. So you could have this assumption. Someone walks into Starbucks, you're sitting there and they have this pregnant belly, and you could be assuming that they're just like, la, la, la. And they could be miserable. And I think some people have some resistance to think that way because they don't want to think, oh, well, they're suffering. Like, I don't want to imagine them suffering. I hope they're happy. That's another limiting belief. I should be happy for them. Why? You're not. Right now, at this moment, you're triggered. You're not. Let yourself feel it, right? Let yourself grieve this emotional trigger right now. You do not have to, like you're saying, you are saying, I should be happy for them. And you're feeling like shit. And you're like, that is the opposite of self-love and compassion, to expect yourself to be here when you're really, really, the truth is what you're feeling is right here. So it's this incredible, giving yourself permission to feel how you feel. And it's remarkable what happens when you do that, when you don't have to be this, oh my gosh, you know, woman of like, I'm so happy for you, when you're not, when your heart is hurting, right? And so I think that's what I really do is I really believe that we need to allow ourselves to feel our pain. And I think that was a big aha moment for me as well, because our hearts, if we don't allow ourselves to feel our pain, we close off our hearts and we don't allow ourselves to be vulnerable. But what we unknowingly do when we close ourselves off to pain is we close ourselves off to pleasure, because the heart is the birthplace of both. And so I have so many women who are like, I can't see myself being pregnant. And, you know, I never used to be able to see myself being pregnant either, until I started to allow myself to be vulnerable and feel my pain, until I started to actually open my heart up. And so if you're wanting to feel those pleasurable feelings and those imaginatory, like you're, you know, that movie scene of you being pregnant and feeling a kicking baby in your belly, and you want to really believe in that, you also, like, which is, you know, heart bursting pleasure, you do need to allow yourself to feel pain. You need to open your heart up to both. And I think when you have the tools of life coaching and you have, you know, the thought work kind of and the mind body work in your back pocket, you know that that's okay to feel your pain because you have the tools to kind of get through it. And it's really something that you will have with you for the rest of your life, not just to get pregnant, but pregnancy, right? Mamahood, all of that comes with it.
Yeah.
Do you think that we're kind of like conditioned to believe that all of our negative emotions are bad? Like they're not allowed.
For
It's
sure.
like, you know, put your big
I was
girl
just
panties
thinking
on
that.
and
Yeah.
don't cry. And
Well, with boys especially, but yeah,
sure.
women too, for sure.
Well,
Yeah,
and
like,
then, yes.
Oh, for sure. That's
right? We're like thinking about our spouses right now. We're like, oh, I just wish, you know, they could, you know, be who they need to be, right? But that's absolutely. I mean, like, I think a really great way of shifting that is it's an emotion. Don't label it as good or bad, negative or positive, right? Just feel it. Feel what it needs to be there. When you're going into the story, when you're making it mean way more than that, like I shouldn't be feeling this way, I can't think negative emotions, it's not good for my fertility. That is what's creating the resistance and the suffering and the disconnect between the mind and body. The story is here. The feeling is here. We want to connect the two. So absolutely.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So let's talk a little bit about self-care, because I feel like that's another thing that women really struggle with, and it makes this whole journey of connecting mind and body even more difficult, is this idea of like, well, I don't have time to take care of myself, or I have to feel guilty if I'm taking care of myself instead of taking care of somebody else. So, you know, what role do you feel self-care is kind of playing in this whole journey, and why is it so important for women to pay attention to that?
I'm going to say something really blunt is I think a lot of women fake self-care. I think they go for a pedicure and they're like, hey, check, ready to like, cook, did it, ready to cook dinner for my husband, ready to pack the lunch, ready to clean the house, and you're like, no. That's faking self-care. So I think that I have an aspect of that in the work that I do in the Fertile Ground program, but I don't see self-care so much as the pedicure, the massage. I see it as letting go of the weight of the world on your shoulders and learning how to do things like ask for help, set boundaries, and emotional expression. So when I see the women in my life and how I was brought up by, you know, the generations of women, it's just, you know, like you said, everyone else first. But just because you go for a pedicure doesn't mean that goes away. You need to learn, and that's why worthiness is such a huge, comes into play here, is you need to learn that you have absolute full right to ask your spouse to help cook dinner if you're tired from working a full day. And there's a lot of resistance to asking for help. There's a lot of resistance we have to, you know, because what we're doing is we're cutting the cord to the generations that came before us in asking for help, right? In saying, honey, I'm tired. Can you do dinner tonight? Also setting boundaries when someone asks you, giving yourself permission to say no, right? What about that? Everything's always like, say yes, say yes, say yes. No, giving yourself permission to say no. So I think as women, self-care to me is to actually really being willing and feeling worthy of asking for what you need. And that may be a massage, and that may be a pedicure, and that might be a facial. Like, I'm a fan of all of those things, but I do it because I love them. I don't do it to check it off the list, right? So take a look at why you're doing what you're doing, you know, and I think if you're feeling tired, if you're feeling exhausted, you have every right to ask for help. It takes two people to make a baby, you know, sometimes more. And so we have to be willing to give ourselves permission to say, this is what I need right now, right? This is what I need. I don't know why I'm tired. I don't need to explain why I'm tired. Stop trying to figure out why you're tired. And just say, this is how I feel. This is what I need. That's self-care to me, is stop forcing, stop pushing, stop doing things when you don't want to do it just because you have to, or there's nothing that you have to do. It's always, always a choice.
Agree. I actually remember having that conversation recently with my mom,
Right.
of all people. Well, you know, I'm starting to recognize some of these patterns in myself as I've tried to kind of dive more into the mind-body side of things, because I spent most of the first 5 years of my health journey like totally focused on the physical and kind of discounting how my thoughts and very critical tape on replay in my mind was really affecting me. And so I've kind of investigated that a little bit more and gone, wow, you know, this is something that's deeply ingrained, and it's generation after generation of women in my family that have had that idea of, you know, just like pushing themselves and not being able to slow down. And, you know, the weight of the world is always on their shoulders, and we have to do this or we have to do this. You know, my mom will say to me like, oh, I can't deal with that today. I have to get this other thing done. And it's something like around the house, like I have to wash the windows. It's like, no, you don't. You want to do that. You want to do that because it stresses you out to see something that's not clean. But that's like
Right.
the fact that it stresses you out to see something unclean is like a whole other issue. Like,
Right.
why are you placing that pressure on yourself?
For sure.
Yeah.
A baby step would just be to say, like, yeah, there might be some, you know, underlying issues why the house needs to look perfect, but a baby step would say, hey, mom, you know, like that's a choice. And I think that was amazing that you said that, you know, like change your words for I have to I choose to.
She got really pissed at me because she's like, well, I have to because I have to, you know, she has like her own reasons. And, you know, I think it's uncomfortable, especially for people who grew up in an earlier generation, to investigate their feelings. Like that wasn't an acceptable thing to do. Like
Right.
a lot of older people, especially like both women and men, I think this is really common in earlier generations, is that you weren't really allowed to sit down and investigate your feelings. You just like pick it up and you keep going, and it doesn't matter if you're pissed and it doesn't matter if you're sad. Like you would just have to keep going. And so when you ask somebody in that generation to sit down and investigate something, it makes them very uncomfortable.
For sure.
And that discomfort sometimes comes out as like lashing out anger, and they're just like, I don't want to talk about this. Why are you asking me? Because it's so like just the idea of getting into themselves a little bit and investigating their feelings is so uncomfortable. That has nothing to do with fertility, but I just thought I would mention that.
It actually does. And that's the thing is, and this is, you know, and the reason why it does is my experience of working with clients is, okay, well, yeah, sounds great to be vulnerable, but I don't know how to do that in front of other people. They're going to feel uncomfortable. And so, you know, and vulnerability is all about opening your heart. And, you know, the heart is directly connected to the womb, and you want to open your womb to receive this baby. Like it's everything. So it's completely directly connected to fertility. We need to be willing to see if we start to change our thoughts about pain and realize that it is actually something that is good for us. Resilience comes out of it. Compassion comes out of it. Connection comes out of pain, right? Not seeing it as a bad thing. And again, the difference between pain and suffering is pain is inevitable, suffering is optional, right? Suffering is the thoughts, the story you make about it. But once you do that, then you're able to see the other person in pain. And this might be your spouse or someone else on the journey, but being willing to see them in their uncomfortableness, like being willing to hold a space, knowing that pain is transformative, knowing that pain is okay. And I just think that's like so incredible for a parenting, you know, tool to see your child crying and not say, it's okay, feel better. You're not, like, it's okay, nothing is wrong. No, absolutely. Your feelings are valid. You're allowed to feel how you feel based on what happened. And kids are really, really good at feeling their feelings. They don't create a story. You see them have the tantrum in the mall and
Isn't that
they get
true?
over it. They're like, whatever, I got the energy out. I moved around. I stomped my feet and now it's done.
Yeah.
I'm sure you have something to say about that, Haley.
Experienced that with my 18-month-old daughter. She's been really attached to daddy over the last 5 days and doesn't want to be with me. She only wants to be comforted by her dad. So there's two aspects here, right? Like she's feeling pain and then I'm also feeling pain too, because I was like,
right.
I'm your mama.
Right.
But I had to put her to bed the other night and oh my gosh, she was so mad. And I just let her, like I actually sat on the rocking chair and like started reading the book while she was like crying and trying to like get out of her bedroom. And then eventually I think it took like 10 good minutes for her to finally be like, okay, I'll sit with you, Mom, and you read me a book. But it was really cool to see like what you're just talking about of like holding that space for her and being there for her, but not telling her to like, not giving up on her, like not being like, oh, you need to pull yourself together. I mean, of course she's too young to even say that, but it was really cool to see her kind of feel the pain and feel the sadness and then come around and then all of a sudden have a smile on her face. And it's like, oh, that was really cool.
I think it's amazing that you were able to allow yourself to be uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's amazing. So well done.
Thanks.
So,
it was uncomfortable, truly.
I have a question about when you work with clients, how do they give you feedback on how others in their life start responding differently to them when they start making some of these mindset shifts? Like I find that piece really interesting. Like how does making those changes personally change the way that others interact with and respond to you?
That's a good question. There are two sides of it. One is it's none of your business how other people respond to you. And I think that's really liberating to know that how people are going to respond to the changes you make is none of your business. It's not about, you, it's about them. So there's that side of it. And then the other side of it is, when you do make changes, I always say that if you want your spouse to make a change, be that change for them. If you want them to be more vulnerable, be willing to be vulnerable in front of them, be willing to hold that space. If you want to just cry in their arms and you don't want them to make you feel, try and make you feel better, you just want them to hold you, do that for them. If you're wanting them to be, more open on the journey, be willing to do that for them. So I think what's most important is leading by example in how we want the other person to be in our lives and in our fertility journey. But for example, in my life, like, because my best life coach is like my husband, without a doubt, because he's been around me for so long and because I've used the tools on him. He's like and he wasn't on board at first. He was like, woo woo, get out of here. Right. And it's not really woo woo. Like this is, I got my certificate from Martha Beck and she, is a Harvard graduate. So this isn't woo woo by any means. But life coaching can be really like, what, what's life coaching? That sounds a little out there. And so after, a few years, it's been incredible how it's really created a connection with my husband and I. And on the journey as well, it's been very, very supportive, and there's been a much deeper connection. Like I know that a lot of people say that like sex can turn kind of crappy on the journey. I've never had better sex in my life. So there are all of these kind of strange different beliefs that you have that can absolutely be transformed with more consciousness, with more awareness, with realizing that you don't have to think a thought. If it makes you feel bad, you don't have to think it, you can change it. So yeah.
Yeah. I love what you said about it not being your business, how other people respond to the changes that you make. And you
Yeah.
know what? In a lot of ways, that's true because we sort of internalize other people's reactions to what we're doing as if it's
Mhm.
like we're doing something weird and we're actively making them uncomfortable. But I think really what it is that when you make a change and it forces somebody else to investigate something that they might be doing that may not be serving them, that's what's uncomfortable. And it really isn't about you. And I think
Mhm.
I struggled with that, like making changes to my diet in particular. I was really excited when I started feeling better with nutrition and, people would notice a difference in me and they'd ask me what I was doing and I would share, some of the things that I'd learned. And I was really surprised that there were a couple of people, mostly acquaintances, like people I didn't know well, but that were really hostile about it. And I'm just like, what is wrong with you? Like, all I'm telling you is how I feel better doing something. I said nothing about what you should do for yourself. Like, I didn't tell you you need to do this. I didn't say everyone needs to do this. I just said I feel better this way. But yeah, I think that discomfort really comes from inside them. It doesn't have anything to do with you. And so I think for
course.
women that are struggling with some of those supportive lifestyle changes and they're getting weird looks from people and just a lot of flack from people
Judgment.
about how they eat. Yeah,
Mhm.
judgment. Thank
Mhm.
you. That's exactly the word that
Mhm.
fits the situation, that
Mhm.
it's not about you.
100%.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
no, I
agree.
totally agree with you there.
Go ahead, Haley.
Oh, I was just going to ask about this really common thing that comes up. And I know that Kristin and I have mentioned it before on the podcast, but when women feel less of a woman when they're struggling to get pregnant, that feeling of it should just be a God-given right? It shouldn't be hard. And so in that case, how do you help women understand that the ability to get pregnant has nothing to do with their self-worth?
That could take, it depends on how rooted that belief is. I think what really changed is realizing that perfectionism, and I think that's what this is rooted in. I really do. And from my experience, perfectionism is like playing a video game with no winning level. And you're like killing yourself in front of the TV screen, staying up till like 3 a.m, trying to figure out with like Doritos all over your face, trying to figure out like how you can win this level. But there's been no winning level program. There's none. You could do it for the rest of your life. And what are you feeling? You're feeling exhausted, depleted, riddled with uncertainty. You don't know what to do. And so once you realize and have the awareness that perfectionism really has no winning level and it's just a moving target, right? Because you're like, oh, finally, when I get to XYZ, I'll be good. And then you get to XYZ and you're like, okay, but what about LMNOP? And so you start going after that and you're like, oh my God, it's a moving target. Perfectionism is totally a moving target. So after you realize that, it's kind of like a pop in your energy system. It's just like this aha of, oh my God, it's impossible. And it's a very liberating experience to know that the only one placing those conditions on yourself, that you need to have all the things, if you need to have this and to be worthy, you need to do this to be enough, is not, truth. And also the only one that can remove it is you. So it's like, it's I think for me it kind of plays to example in all the other areas of my life as well. And sometimes it helps to use an analogy like your career or something, right? Because we have so much energy around the fertility journey that perfectionism plays a role in which, like, say you'll never ask for that promotion because you're waiting for the perfect time or you're waiting for the perfect conditions in order for it to happen. But chances are you'll never ask for that raise because it is perfect conditions don't exist. And I think it's really, really important to know that. I think that the bottom line is that perfectionism doesn't exist, so that you now all of a sudden realize that you can remove that condition and you can also realize that you are worthy and you are enough now, because there's nothing outside of you. There's no one outside of you. Like, it's like the universe, we have these, like, I think the universe or whatever it is like looking down on us and saying, like, you have to do this, you have to do that, you need to do everything right. The only one doing that is you. So once you remove that, I think that is self-worth. That's what I think. That's what it happened for me, is realizing that the only one placing, oh, I'll feel enough when blank, right? Because if you don't fix that now, or, not fix, I hate that word, but if you don't get a hold on that now and shift that now, it'll just change to something else when you're pregnant and when you're a mom. Well, I won't be enough until I make those homemade cupcakes or whatever it is,
So
right?
true.
Right? So
I think if we really investigate that, if those of us that struggle with that really sit down and think about it, we would definitely see that we have held that kind of pattern for everything throughout our entire lives.
Exactly.
And perfectionism is, especially if you have been living in that space your entire life, it's difficult to get a handle on. And, I'm very supportive of women seeking out help for that, because it's really difficult to get a handle on that on your own. And you were saying earlier about how helpful it is to have a third party perspective, because, sometimes we don't even recognize that the things that we're doing are rooted in perfectionism. You just think, well, that's just how I am. And then you worry. And of course, I'm speaking all of this personally. Had this experience. Yeah. But then you wonder, if I really stripped all that away, who the hell would I even be?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you would have a lot more fun, and that's a great question to ask yourself. That's actually a really great question to journal about. Who would I be if I didn't need to place all these conditions on myself? And so what I started to see, for example, in my life, is when I got rejected or when someone would say no, I didn't take it personally. I didn't make that mean anything. What are you making rejection mean? What are you making failure mean? That's nothing to do with you, right? You can still feel worthy and enough despite what happens on the outside. So I think that's what it was for me. It was putting myself out there, because once I let that go, you put yourself out there a lot more, because you just stop giving a shit about what people think as much, right? It's kind of like this liberating freedom of allowing yourself to be who you are at this moment, just right now, not who don't plan you're going to be tomorrow or the next week, but just right now. And then this is all of a sudden this incredible confidence to put yourself out there and to do what you need to do, whether it's ask for the raise, ask for the promotion, take the next step on your fertility journey, or just realize that I don't need a baby in order to feel confident, in order to feel like I'm fertile. What about that? Why do you need to baby in order to feel fertile? Even that, you can change your thoughts around that. You can feel into fertility, and that's one of the things I do with clients as well, is the metaphor of fertility. What does it mean to you, and how can you begin to incorporate that into your life? So yeah, I think it's really, really cool to gain the awareness and to shine the light on all of that while you're on this journey. And it really enables you to enjoy your life now, which is, I think, what I most love about the mind-body approach to getting pregnant, is realizing you don't have to wait to be happy. Realizing that you can change your thoughts to be happy as soon as today, and increase your fertility by up to 55%, according to the Domar Center of Harvard, the research they've done there. So it's a win-win, ladies. It really is.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. So we're coming to an end here, and we always ask our podcast guests about what they want the big takeaway of this episode to be. What do you want that kind of final message to be to listeners?
I think, that's a good question. I think it would be I guess I just want them to know that this journey is not your fault. I don't want you to feel like this is all your fault, that this is something that you have to suffer through. I think often we think that we need to suffer in order to grow. And Eckhart Tolle says, we suffer to grow until we realize we don't. And you don't have to suffer through the journey. You don't have to be riddled with uncertainty. And there can be a healthy sense of control. There can be bits of certainty when you learn how to change your thoughts that support your journey. So it's not your fault. There's absolutely nothing wrong with you, because this is an incredible catalyst to be an incredible parent for your baby that will come through you. And that is a win-win situation in my eyes. That's how I see this journey. I used to be really afraid to say it because I thought it would trigger people, until I gained my self-worth and said, fuck it, I'm doing it. This is my message loud and clear that, sorry, you don't have to suffer through it. You really don't. You can be happy now. It's the truth. Like, I'm living proof, and so are my clients. So it just is.
That's amazing.
I love that.
Great advice. Just all around. What an awesome episode. I can't wait to share this with everybody. So thank you so much for being on the podcast today and sharing your incredible perspective. I mean, this is some of the things that we talked about today are things that we've really never addressed on the podcast before. And I'm really confident that this can help a lot of people just shift that mindset around what this journey means to them, how they're internalizing it, how they're making it their self-worth, how perfectionism is driving how they feel about themselves and how they feel about how they should be on this journey, and letting go of that and discovering a way to do that. So thank you again for being here. We will definitely be linking to your website and your work and your social media in the show notes for the episode. And I'm sure we'll have you back.
Yeah. No, thanks for having us, guys. And like I said, I'm so happy you're bringing awareness to this because I think it's vital.
Yeah, same to you. So if anybody listening out there, go check out her podcast. It's full of juicy information, just like we learned today from you.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right. That's going to wrap things up for today's interview with Spenser. I hope that you enjoyed this interview. Both Kristin and I obviously loved it. We were just enamored by everything that she was saying. And I think the main reason is just because it's so true. It just rings so true to both of us. And I imagine if it rings true to us, that it ring true to you as well. So we hope that you can take what those gems that she gave us during that interview forward in your life and your fertility journey, and that it helps you find joy and happiness and self-compassion while you're trying to conceive or preparing to expand your family. And if you want to learn more about us, please go over to our website at tinyfeet.co. That's tinyfeet.co. And you can check out all the awesome things that we have available for you. We have a free course on how to choose the best prenatal supplements. We also have a way to work with us one-on-one with functional lab testing and nutritional therapy and supplements as well. And we also are going to be building a new online course called Fertile in 5 Masterclass. So stay tuned. All those great things are coming. And if you want to be notified, you can hop on our email list or go over to Instagram and make sure you follow us.
And if you are looking for information about Spenser, her website and program and her social media, we have links to all of that on our website as well, tinyfeet.co/podcast, and it'll be under episode 38. See you guys next week.